There is a single word in the Quechua language that tells you everything you need to know about what's underneath Machu Picchu, and it isn't a legend, and it isn't a guess. It's a warning, built directly into the vocabulary of the peoples who lived there first. The word is Chincana. It means labyrinth. Literally, in Quechua, it means the place where you get lost. Long before any outsider set foot on that mountain, the people who called it home had already named the thing underneath it, and they named it as a place you do not enter carelessly. In 1911, an American explorer named Hiram Bingham climbed into the Peruvian Andes and became famous around the world for discovering Machu Picchu. That's the version of the story that made it into the textbooks. Here's the part that usually gets left out. When Bingham arrived, there were already Quechua farming families living on and around the site. It had never been lost to them. It had only been lost to everyone outside their language, outside their oral tradition, outside the stories that had been passed down for generations about what was built on top of that mountain, and what was built underneath it. And what they were saying, long before a single archaeologist agreed with them, was that Machu Picchu didn't end at ground level. That beneath the temples and the terraces and the stone walls tourists photograph today, there was another city, a hidden one made of tunnels and sealed chambers, running for miles beneath the sacred sites of the entire Inca heartland. This is the story of what the Quechua said was down there, what outside investigators have found that lines up with it, and why the one chamber that came closest to proving it has been sealed shut by the Peruvian government ever since. To understand why this claim carries so much weight, you have to understand it wasn't invented by modern conspiracy theorists chasing views. It goes back further than Bingham, further than the founding of the United States, all the way to the earliest years after the Spanish conquest itself. In 1594, a Spanish Jesuit priest wrote an account describing a tunnel that began at the Temple of the Sun in Cusco, ran underground behind what is now Cusco Cathedral, and ended at the ancient fortress of Sacsayhuaman. This wasn't a Quechua storyteller. This was a European colonizer writing in Spanish for a Spanish audience decades before anyone had reason to invent an elaborate underground myth to please the locals. And he was describing in plain terms exactly what Quechua oral tradition had been saying all along, a network of tunnels the Inca called Chincana, connecting their most sacred places, running underneath a city Europeans thought they had already fully mapped. If a hostile outside observer, writing for a colonial record, independently confirms a detail from local oral tradition, that's not folklore holding itself up. That's two completely separate sources, landing on the same physical claim, 400 years before anyone could accuse either side of copying the other. And according to the oral tradition itself, these tunnels were never just about getting from one place to another underground. They meant something. Some accounts of Quechua cosmology describe the Chincana as far more than a passage, as the womb of Pachamama, the Earth Mother deity at the center of Andean belief. The Inca ruler, considered a direct descendant of the sun, was said to carry a solid gold effigy called the Punchao, nearly 3 feet tall, through the tunnels in ritual journeys believed to fertilize the world as it passed through the dark underground, the same way the sun fertilizes the world above it. This wasn't a shortcut. In the belief system of the people who built it, walking those tunnels was closer to a sacred act than a construction project. If that's true, and if that ritual significance runs as deep into Inca religion as some researchers argue, then a hidden network running beneath their most important city wasn't a footnote to their civilization. It might have been one of the central architectural expressions of their entire relationship with the earth itself, which raises the obvious question. If the tunnels were that important to them, how far did they actually go? And did that network really reach Machu Picchu, 50 miles from Cusco, high on its own mountain? Here's where the story stops being purely oral tradition and starts becoming something you can put instruments on. Archaeologists studying Machu Picchu today estimate that roughly 40% of the entire site, the actual physical construction, exists below what visitors can see standing on the terraces. Drainage channels, retaining walls, foundational stonework, all buried beneath the postcard version of the ruins. The Inca didn't just build a city on top of a mountain. They built almost half of it into the mountain itself, invisible to anyone just walking through. That alone tells you the people who constructed this site had no hesitation about building extensively underground. It wasn't unusual for them. It was standard practice, which makes the Chincana legend a hidden network running beneath the site. Not a wild claim, but a completely consistent one with how they were already known to build everything else. And then, in February of 2010, a French explorer named David Crespi identified something specific. Near a structure called the Temple of the Three Doors, he found what he believed was the entrance to a sealed underground chamber system. Not folklore, not oral tradition, an actual physical opening, sitting right there on one of the most heavily visited archaeological sites on Earth. 2 years later, in 2012, a French archaeologist named Thierry Jamin, working with a team from the Inca Institute, brought in ground-penetrating radar and electromagnetic scanning equipment to investigate further. And what they reported finding was almost too perfect. A hidden chamber sealed behind existing walls that had been built around the year 1450, right in the window of Inca imperial expansion. Some members of the team went further, suggesting the chamber's location and construction were consistent with a royal burial site, and that it could potentially hold the remains of Pachacuti, the Inca ruler credited with transforming the empire into the power that would go on to build Machu Picchu itself. Think about what that would mean. Not just proof that tunnels existed beneath the site, but a sealed royal chamber undisturbed for more than 500 years, sitting right beneath the feet of tourists taking photographs above it. So naturally, the next step should have been simple. Open it, confirm it, answer the question once and for all. Instead, Peru's regional Ministry of Culture stepped in and refused to authorize further excavation. Officially, the reasoning was structural risk, concern that opening the chamber could destabilize a site already under enormous pressure from mass tourism and centuries of exposure. The application to proceed, filed by the Inca Institute, was denied. Access to the area Crespi had identified was formally restricted, and as far as public record shows, that chamber has never been opened. A structure built into one of the most sacred sites of an entire civilization, matched to oral tradition going back centuries, corroborated independently by a colonial-era document, physically detected with modern scanning equipment, and the government agency with the authority to look inside made the decision to seal it back up instead. Maybe that's genuinely about preservation. Machu Picchu is fragile, and the concern about tourist damage is real and well documented. But it's also true that more than a decade later, the question the Chincana legend was always really asking, what's actually down there and who, if anyone, is buried inside it, remains completely unanswered. Not disproven, not confirmed, just closed off, the door sealed the same way it was found. And here's the detail that makes this harder to dismiss than a simple local legend that got out of hand. In the years since the Machu Picchu chamber was sealed off from further study, archaeological teams using laser scanning and remote sensing technology in nearby Cusco have physically confirmed the existence of real Chincana tunnel segments running for over a mile beneath the city. Not theorized, not inferred from folklore, but detected, mapped and verified with modern instruments. The tunnels the Quechua had been describing for centuries turned out to be exactly where they said they were, which means the only real open question left isn't whether the Chincana network is real. Modern science has already confirmed parts of it. The question is how far it actually goes, and whether the chamber sitting beneath Machu Picchu, sealed since 2012, is the missing piece that would prove that oral tradition was right about all of it, top to bottom, the whole way through. Until Peru's Ministry of Culture changes its position or new technology makes another case for opening that chamber too dangerous to ignore, that question stays exactly where it's been for the last 500 years, underground, in the dark, right where the people who built it always said it would be. What do you think is actually behind that sealed wall, a royal tomb the world has been kept from seeing, or a chamber the Peruvian government has good reason not to risk opening at all? Tell me what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.